Tyson Fury says he's going to fight 5 more times, and he's far from over. He's just getting started at 35. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm going to say Tyson Fury fights once, maybe twice this year, and then never fights a professional boxer in a ring again. He might do some one-offs, fight some MMA fighters, fight some YouTubers. But in terms of being competitive at the highest level, this is the last year we're going to see Tyson Fury in a competitive boxing ring.
But he says he's got 2 fights with Usyk, 2 fights with Joshua, maybe Ngannou again. Who knows? At the rate that he's been fighting and the schedule he keeps, that means he'll be around till he's about 45.
Welcome, everyone, to Top Stories. We got the takes there from the champs here in studio, Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi. And we're joined by Emmy Award-winning producer George Jakovic. And looking forward to hearing what Tyson Fury has to say about his future. This is what he posted on Instagram.
I keep hearing talk of people saying that I should retire or I'm going to retire soon or whatever. I ain't retiring anywhere. I've got 2 fights with Usyk for the Undisputed, twice. Then I'm going to fight AJ at least once, maybe twice, if there's a rematch, if he wants one, after the first battering I give him. And then I'm going to fight Ngannou again. And that's just a start. So there's 5 little fights for you to whet your appetite with. I ain't going nowhere. Nowhere. 35-year-old in the prime of my life, and I'm ready to smash up.
All right, well, the words of Tyson Fury on Instagram, and as Paulie mentioned, he's got 2 fights with Usyk, possibly 2 fights with Joshua if he batters him, as he said, and then a rematch with Ngannou. All right, George, we've heard from Chris, we've heard from Paulie. What are your take, or what do you think about what Tyson Fury said on Instagram?
So my take is if they put odds up somewhere that Tyson Fury's got 5 more fights, I'm putting all my money that he does not have 5 more fights in his career. There's no way. And Paulie, he would be fighting till he's like 50 with all these delays. And so, and he says it's just the beginning. This is Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, who has the Netflix special, who I think that Netflix special is coming back. He's not fighting 5 more times. I mean, we don't even know if he's going to fight 2 more times. A lot of people like Sean Porter don't even think he's going to fight Alexander Usyk in May. So, I mean, Tyson Fury is there to entertain. He always says that. Are you not entertained? He loves that line from Gladiators. So this is Tyson Fury being Tyson Fury. There were all the rumors before this fight was postponed that he was getting dropped in sparring. Like the hottest rumor was that Opetaya, the former cruiserweight champion, dropped him in sparring and was shipped out. But Chris, Paulie, I'm with you guys. Maybe we get this next fight, but man, he really laid out some kind of schedule. So five more fights. I'd say that's a good no. I'd say go to sportsbetting.ag and there will be no line up on that. And if there was, I would bet the under. If the over-under was 5 fights, I'm betting the under on that one.
We don't give gambling advice here on ProBox
TV.
George, you said the key word in there. You said, or key phrase. It's Tyson being Tyson. I mean, laying all that out. We all know how boxing works in terms of the atmosphere and the landscape and how much it changes. All those fights, it's just to get people talking about it. You know, listen, it works. Tyson Fury is one of the biggest shows in the game today. So when he speaks, people listen. But if you just look at his track record, what's been happening lately, in terms of him fighting that often, in terms of him getting up for big fights, which every one of those that he said was a big fight, maybe not the Ngannou fight, especially by the time it happens. I just don't see it. I mean, he's looked like a guy who's halfway into retirement the last 2 years in terms of how little he's fought, the way he showed up against Ngannou. You know, he has a lot to prove in this next fight against Usyk, which, you know, like you said, Sean Porter's even questioning if that fight's ever going to happen. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done, a lot that needs to be uncovered before we can really talk realistically about Tyson Fury's future.
Yeah, you know, George mentioned the under. I'm with you guys. The under is 5. But how much, Paulie, does it rely on what happens with Usyk? But let's say he beats Usyk and he becomes the undisputed heavyweight champion. Does he just say, okay, I'm going to go out on top with all the belts? And
that's what Chris thinks.
But if he loses, then he wants to fight him again to get him back.
I don't know that the results really matter, man. I mean, he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum, does Tyson Fury. He retires when he wants. He unretires when he wants to. Also, you know, George, you made a good point about the Netflix special. You know, when the fame game gets to a high level for a human being in general, there are a lot of things you have to compartmentalize, and there are a lot more things, you have a lot more on your plate that you have to divvy your time up with. And that leaves you to not be able to dedicate the proper amount of time to boxing. And boxing is a tough thing to dedicate to, man. I mean, you've got to dedicate all your physical, all your mental, and really dedicate yourself in each training camp, especially if you're fighting at the highest level, which is the reason you're famous is only if you're fighting at the highest level, right? So I think that once you start to create a brand in other avenues, I think that it's a risk to keep fighting because now your brand can take a hit if you're starting to, look suspect or subpar the way he did in the Ngannou fight a few months back. So Fury has worked very hard to build up this reputation, this branding image that he has. And he wants to look good. And while he can look good, I think he'll keep fighting. But I think even he's going to realize that in order to look good, the amount of dedication and time it takes to give to boxing in order to nurture this brand and stay with it at a high level is going to be too much. He can nurture the brand in other ways. So at this point, he's already reached a high level. So he can nurture the brand doing reality shows and doing other things. Because if he keeps trying to nurture it by fighting, and he can't dedicate the proper amount of time to fighting and training and all that stuff, well then, your overall brand's going to take a hit because you're going to look bad, Not all of us are Conor McGregor where we can be a punching bag and still become famous. You need a dumb enough fan base for that. But in reality, for the most part, even guys like Tyson Fury, I think either have to stay winning or they have to move around and do other things like this reality show and other things, which can keep nurturing their brand because they've already achieved everything at the highest level in boxing.
Yeah, Chris,
Can I say real quick,
ahead,
George? I watched that whole Netflix series, the whole Tyson Fury, and he's all over the place. So that clip you just played, I think if he was hooked up to a lie detector, it would say he's telling the truth. I think he believes that in that moment. But you catch him tomorrow, and he's going to say something different. He's going to say one more fight and I'm done, and he would pass a lie detector test. That's how he is. So these statements that come out, I think in the moment he was being truthful, but then check with us in a week, and we could be talking about a whole different Tyson Fury story in a week.
I was going to ask, how much does his future, I mean, obviously we don't know what's going on in his head, but if he beats Usyk, becomes undisputed heavyweight champion, isn't it smart for him to just ride off in the sunset at the top of his game?
Well, you said we don't know what's going on in his head. I don't know if he knows what's going on in his head either.
Yeah.
Just like what George
That's the
alluded
point,
to.
right?
That's the point of him, and one of the reasons why I think he's so endearing to fans and to why he's such a topic of conversation whenever he does come up, is because he's wild. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what he's going to do. You don't know that unpredictability makes him must-watch TV, which is why he's got a reality TV show, which is why we're talking about him right now, which is why the media hangs on his every word. What is he going to do next? Because we have no idea. Even when he says, I'm going to fight this guy, this guy, this guy. Listen, none of us take that seriously because he first of all, is not in control of all that. Second of all, this could change at any moment. So you got to take it one fight at a time. You got to see what's ahead of him. What's ahead of him right now is Alexander Usyk, a very motivated, a very pissed off Alexander Usyk. And the guy's never been beaten. People ask, what is he so good at? The guy's good at winning. He doesn't know how to lose. And so that is something that Tyson Fury, like you alluded to, champ, really needs to dedicate to. Stop talking about what you're going to do down the line. Talk about the man right in front of you. Don't disrespect Alexander Usyk's chances in this fight. I've been leaning towards Fury in the fight. I think Fury's going to win the fight. But if anything less than 100% Fury shows up, it's going to be a rough night.
And he mentioned that there's 2 fights with Usyk. So this whole new thing about that happens in boxing now, where the guys do 2-fight deals, and
which is ridiculous.
Because the rematch clause that used to happen in the past, or the fact that a rematch used to depend on whether the first fight was good or even worth watching again. Now these fighters they give us this clown show where they sign 2-fight deals just as money grabs. The way Spence and Crawford did. Well, now nobody wants to watch the rematch, and they have to talk about this rematch that nobody wants to watch. I've noticed it's become sort of a common thing now, common theme in boxing. It seems like Fury and Usyk have done that, because I was going to say, I know it's been 20 years or so since Lennox Lewis retired, right? But remember, what happens if Fury beats Usyk but doesn't look good and retires? Does he still get to walk away with the fanfare and the accolades, which obviously he'll always have achieved, but will people perceive him the same, or will they sort of knock him? I remember Lennox. Lennox was losing the fight with Vitaly Klitschko and won it on a cut. He was losing on all 3 scorecards. Won it on a cut, and then didn't give the rematch and retired. And his brand, the perception of Lennox's career, rightfully so, is of a great and the heavyweight of his era, and one of the best heavyweights in history, which I agree with. But what I'm saying is, have people changed in 20 years? Obviously, it's a new generation. 20 years later, can Fury afford to win this fight and look subpar again the way he looked in the Ngannou exhibition? Can he squeak one by and say, you know what, I just don't have it these last 2 fights, I'm gonna retire? Does his brain take a hit? It's a question worth asking, because people today, I don't know if they think the same way as they did before. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's something worth asking.
And that's an unfortunate thing for fighters today, because if that's the case, if he does go out similar to Lennox Lewis and he puts on a subpar performance but still gets the win, and then it goes, listen guys, I'm not the same guy I used to be, I'm going to retire, that shouldn't tarnish his legacy. He made the right decision. Look at Roy Jones Jr. He came down to fight Antonio Tarver. He fights him, he beats him, squeaks by in that first fight. Then goes, listen, I'm a man, I'm going to give him his rematch, gets starched. And that changes the legacy of Roy Jones Jr. So that's what makes it so difficult for us fighters, because it's what have you done for me lately? And unfortunately, careers are long. Guys tend to fight beyond when their best years are, because that's when the money is. That's the thing that people don't realize. We make the most money at the end of our career when we probably aren't as good as we were. And unfortunately, that's the case. And a lot of guys keep fighting, and they put on subpar performances because of the money that's coming in. But if a guy like Tyson, who's made so much money and now has other avenues to make money, goes, hey, listen, I know I said this, I'm flesh and bone like anyone else. And my body isn't the same it used to be. I'm not performing the way I see myself as. I'm going to wrap it up. Like, listen, I'm still undefeated. I'm still undisputed. It is what it is. I would hope that the fanfare would look at it, but you never know. Fans are fickle.
Yeah. All right, George.
You guys, you talk about storybook endings. Chris and Paulie, you didn't have storybook endings. It just rarely happens in the sport where a guy goes out
we didn't
on
have
his own
storybook
terms.
beginnings either.
Right. And wins that last big fight and steps off into the sunset. It just doesn't happen. And you would think that a guy like Fury, who's made so much money, maybe it'll happen with him. I don't know. I don't think it will. But Chris, you brought up Alexander Usyk and how motivated he is. He missed the birth of one of his kids when he was training for a fight that ultimately never happened. So, you talk about Usyk and his motivation. If they do fight in May, I think it's just going to ramp things up even more. And we'll see what happens. I can't wait to do a big fight preview, but I think Usyk's going to beat Fury.
That reminds me.
That's going to be huge. Yeah.
When you said about Usyk missing the birth of his kid, that reminds me of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron, when he missed his father's funeral, and his mom
That's
said,
right.
You're not going to come back for the funeral. He goes, he'll still be dead tomorrow too. You know what I mean? I guess Alexander looked at it like, the kid will be born and he'll still be alive when I get back.
That's what winners say, man.
Yeah.
That's a winner
Tough,
mentality.
man. It's tough though, man. It's tough, but ultimately,
Sacrifice.
the mentality is kind of true too.